The massive crystalline chamber of the Galactic Council hummed with nervous energy as representatives from 47 different species gathered for what many believed would be their final diplomatic meeting. At the center of the room, suspended in a containment field that flickered with dangerous red warning lights, was the most feared creature in known space. Zixithara the Devourer stretched nearly 30 meters from snout to tail, her obsidian scales rippling with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed like a predator's heartbeat. 6 razor-sharp limbs ended in claws that could slice through starship hulls, while her massive head housed jaws filled with teeth designed to crush asteroid miners whole. The dragon's 4 eyes, each the size of a personal transport pod, glowed with an intelligence that was both ancient and utterly alien. Ambassador Krelnox of the Hegemony stood at the speaking podium, his chitinous exoskeleton clicking nervously as he addressed the assembly. The insectoid diplomat had seen countless horrors across the galaxy, but even he found it difficult to maintain his composure in the presence of the creature. "Honored delegates," Krelnox began, his translator device struggling to convert his complex pheromone communications into universal standard. "We face an unprecedented crisis. 3 star systems have fallen to this single entity. The Rigel colonies, once home to 12 billion souls, are now nothing but cosmic dust. The mining stations of Kepler 442b simply vanished overnight, leaving only metallic debris floating in space." The chamber erupted in a cacophony of alien voices, clicks, whistles, and electromagnetic pulses as various species expressed their fear and outrage. The massive Gorlon representative, resembling a living mountain of crystallized rock, sent seismic vibrations through the floor as he communicated his people's terror. The ethereal whisper folk, beings of pure energy contained in environmental suits, flickered rapidly in patterns that indicated extreme distress. High Counselor Vexara, the ancient Trilarian who had overseen galactic peace for over 3 centuries, raised her 6 arms for silence. Her silver skin had dulled with age and worry, and the neural tendrils that crowned her elongated skull swayed with barely controlled emotion. "The situation is dire beyond our worst projections," Vexara announced, her voice carrying the weight of her years. "Our combined fleets, representing the military might of nearly 50 civilizations, have proven utterly useless against this creature. Energy weapons simply bounce off her hide. Kinetic bombardment appears to tickle her. Our most advanced AI systems shut down in terror when they attempt to calculate attack patterns against her." Admiral Thyneris of the Vorthan Empire, his blue-skinned features marked by the ritual scars of 1,000 space battles, stood to address the council. "My fleet engaged the creature near the Proxima Relay Station. We brought our finest dreadnoughts, ships that had never known defeat. She destroyed them all while seemingly playing. My sensors recorded her vital signs during the battle. Her heart rate never increased. She was literally toying with us." The holographic display at the center of the chamber flickered to life, showing tactical recordings of various failed military engagements against Zixithara. In each recording, the massive dragon moved with fluid grace that defied her size, breathing streams of plasma that could melt titanium steel alloys, and demonstrating combat reflexes that made her appear to be fighting in slow motion compared to her opponents. Dr. Yithmara, the lead xenobiologist from the Science Consortium, projected her findings through a neural link interface. Her people, the Mindari, communicated primarily through shared thoughts, making her emotional distress palpable to every telepath in the chamber. "We have studied this entity extensively from a safe distance," Dr. Yithmara transmitted. "Her biological structure defies our understanding of physics. She appears to generate energy through some form of quantum metabolism, essentially feeding on the fundamental forces of the universe itself. Her brain shows neural patterns that suggest intelligence levels that exceed our measurement capabilities. Most terrifyingly, our psychological profiles indicate that she views all other sentient life as we might view bacteria." The Zephyrian delegate, Commander Snout uncoiled his serpentine form to his full 4-meter height. His species had evolved from apex predators, and their understanding of fear was deeply rooted in survival instincts. "The creature's hunting patterns show a deliberate intelligence," he hissed through his translator. "She is not simply destroying randomly. Each attack has been carefully chosen to maximize psychological impact on our populations. She wants us to live in terror. This is not mere predation. This is psychological warfare on a galactic scale." As the debate continued, a small commotion erupted near the chamber's main entrance. The Council's security forces, an elite unit comprised of the galaxy's most formidable warriors, were escorting what appeared to be a family of the newest species to join the galactic community. Humans had only recently achieved faster-than-light travel, and their application for council membership was still being processed through the bureaucratic maze that typically took decades to complete. They were considered a primitive species, barely worth notice among the ancient civilizations that dominated galactic politics. The human family consisted of 2 adults and a small child who couldn't have been more than 6 or 7 years old by their species' development standards. The male human wore the simple uniform of a diplomatic courier, while the female appeared to be some sort of scientist based on the instruments she carried. But it was the child who drew attention. The small human male had curious brown eyes that seemed to take in everything around him with wonder rather than fear. His hair was an unruly mess of dark brown curls, and he clutched a small stuffed animal that appeared to be modeled after some sort of earth predator. Unlike every other being in the chamber, the child showed no signs of distress or fear in the presence of Zixthara. Ambassador Krell Knox clicked his mandibles in annoyance. "This is a closed session dealing with matters of galactic security. Why are civilians present, especially members of such a junior species?" The human male stepped forward. His movements calm despite the hostile attention focused on him. "I'm Dr. Marcus Chen, xenolinguistics specialist. My wife, Dr. Sarah Chen, is a xenobiologist. We were requested to provide consultation on possible communication protocols with the entity. Our son Tommy is here because we had no childcare options on such short notice." Several delegates expressed their outrage at the presumption of the humans. How dare such a primitive species suggest they could contribute to solving a crisis that had stumped the galaxy's greatest minds? "Your species has been in space for what, barely 50 years? Scoffed the Altarian representative, his golden skin shimmering with disdain. "What could you possibly offer that our combined wisdom cannot provide?" Dr. Sarah Chen activated a holographic display showing complex biochemical analyses. "Humans have a unique evolutionary trait. We co-evolved alongside numerous apex predators on our homeworld, but instead of developing better physical defenses, we developed psychological resilience and an unusual capacity for forming social bonds with other species, including potential threats." The council members exchanged glances filled with skepticism. The idea that some sort of primitive bonding mechanism could be effective against a creature that had destroyed entire star systems seemed laughable. Meanwhile, young Tommy Chen had become fascinated by Zixthara. While every other being in the chamber gave the contained creature as wide a berth as possible, the child had somehow worked his way to the edge of the containment field. His small face was pressed against the transparent aluminum barrier, and he was making soft cooing sounds as if he were looking at a beloved pet. Zixthara, for her part, had noticed the child. Her massive head turned slowly, bringing one of her dinner plate-sized eyes to focus on the small human. For the first time since her capture, the dragon's bioluminescent patterns changed, shifting from the angry reds and pulsing whites of a predator to softer blues and greens. Security Chief Vorak, a massive being who resembled a cross between a bear and a tank, moved to intervene. "The young human is too close to the containment field. If there's any kind of system failure—" "Wait," interrupted Dr. Sarah Chen, her scientific training overriding her maternal instincts. Look at the creature's bio readings. The monitoring systems around Zixthara's containment unit were showing unprecedented changes. Her heart rate had slowed to what appeared to be a resting state. Her stress hormones had dropped to levels not seen since her capture. Most remarkably, her brain activity was showing patterns that the computer systems were having difficulty categorizing. Tommy pressed his small hand against the barrier and spoke in the simple, earnest way that only children could manage. "Hi there, pretty dragon. Are you sad? You look sad. I'm Tommy. What's your name?" The massive creature tilted her head, studying the child with an intensity that made every adult in the chamber hold their breath. Slowly, deliberately, Zixthara moved closer to the barrier, bringing her enormous snout within centimeters of where Tommy's hand rested against the transparent aluminum. Dr. Yithmara's telepathic projections suddenly filled with shock and confusion. "Her neural patterns, they're completely different. I'm reading what appears to be curiosity. The aggression markers have disappeared entirely." The chamber fell silent except for the humming of the containment systems and the soft sound of Tommy's voice as he continued to talk to the dragon, as if she were nothing more than a large, friendly pet. "My daddy says you're from very far away. I've never been to space before. It's pretty cool here, but I miss my dog. Do you have any friends? I bet you're lonely. I get lonely sometimes too when we move to new places." Zixthara's massive eye blinked slowly, and for a moment, every delegate in the chamber would have sworn they saw something that challenged everything they thought they knew about the universe's most feared predator. They saw understanding. The tension in the chamber had shifted from terror to bewildered fascination as delegates watched the impossible scene unfolding before them. Tommy Chen continued his one-sided conversation with Zixthara, completely oblivious to the fact that he was addressing the most dangerous entity in known space. "I like your pretty colors," Tommy said, pointing at the dragon's bioluminescent patterns. "They keep changing like my mom's mood ring. Are you trying to talk? I wish I could understand what you're saying." Dr. Marcus Chen watched his son with a mixture of pride and terror. His expertise in xenolinguistics had taught him to recognize communication patterns across species, but what he was observing defied every protocol he'd studied. "Sarah," he whispered to his wife, "are you recording this?" Dr. Sarah Chen's instruments were working overtime, capturing every detail of the biological and psychological changes occurring in both the dragon and the child. "Marcus, her brain chemistry is completely different from our initial readings. It's as if she's remember something, or maybe recognizing something she thought was lost." High Counselor Vexara stepped closer to the human family, her ancient mind struggling to process what her senses were telling her. "Dr. Chen, is your child exhibiting any unusual behaviors? Any signs of mental influence or psychic manipulation?" "Tommy's always been like this," Dr. Sarah Chen replied, never taking her eyes off her son. "On Earth, he's the kid who approaches every stray animal, every nervous dog, every injured bird. He doesn't seem to have a fear response to creatures that others find threatening." Ambassador Krell Knox clicked his mandibles rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation in his species. "This is absurd. The creature has demonstrated complete hostility to every form of sentient life. She reduced the entire Rigel defense fleet to atomic particles without hesitation." "Maybe," said Tommy, turning briefly from the barrier to look at the imposing insectoid ambassador, "she was scared. When my dog Buster got scared, he used to bite people. But he wasn't mean. He was just afraid." The comparison drew outraged sounds from several delegates, but Dr. Yithmara's telepathic projections suddenly flooded the chamber with startling information. "Wait. The child may be onto something. I'm detecting memory engrams being accessed in the creature's neural patterns. These are deep, Old memories, memories from before. The dragon's massive head moved closer to the barrier, and she made a sound that none of the universal translators could process. It was low, rumbling, almost musical in its complexity. Tommy's face lit up with delight. "You are trying to talk, I can tell." He pressed both hands against the barrier now, standing on his tiptoes to get as close as possible to the enormous creature. "I'm sorry I can't understand, but you sound nice. You sound lonely." Zixthera's response sent shockwaves through every monitoring system in the chamber. She began to vocalize in patterns that created harmonic resonances, sounds that seemed to bypass the auditory processing centers and speak directly to some deeper part of consciousness. Several of the more telepathically sensitive species began to sway as the sounds washed over them. Dr. Marcus Chen's linguistic training kicked into overdrive. Those aren't random sounds. There's structure there, syntax, emotional context. She's trying to communicate, but it's using frequency modulations that our translators weren't designed to handle. Security Chief Vorak moved closer to the barrier, his massive frame casting a shadow over the small human child. "Perhaps we should remove the young one. This situation is becoming increasingly unpredictable." "No," said Tommy firmly, with the stubborn determination that only a 6-year-old could muster. "She's trying to tell me something important. She's not scary. She's sad." As if responding to his words, Zixthera's bioluminescent patterns shifted to deeper blues and purples, colors that the monitoring systems identified as being associated with complex emotional states. Her massive body, which had remained coiled in an aggressive posture since her capture, began to relax. Commander Sthak uncoiled nervously. "This is beyond our understanding. The creature's behavioral patterns are changing in ways that our psychological models cannot predict." Dr. Sarah Chen studied her readouts with growing amazement. Her stress hormones are now at levels we'd associate with contentment. Her neural activity is showing patterns similar to what we see in highly social species during bonding behaviors. Tommy suddenly stepped back from the barrier and looked up at his parents with the earnest expression of a child who had just made an important discovery. She's not a monster. She's lost. She's been lost for a really, really long time, and she doesn't know how to ask for help. The chamber erupted in skeptical murmurs and dismissive sounds, but High Counselor Vexara raised her arms for silence. Her centuries of experience had taught her to recognize moments when the universe revealed truths that challenged conventional wisdom. "Child," she said gently, "how do you know this?" Tommy shrugged with the casual confidence of childhood. "Same way I knew Buster was scared. Same way I knew the hurt bird in our garden just wanted to fly again. She's got sad eyes." Admiral Thaneris stepped forward, his battle-scarred features twisted with disbelief. "You're suggesting that this creature, this destroyer of worlds, is simply misunderstood. My entire fleet was obliterated. When people are really, really scared, sometimes they hurt others," Tommy replied matter-of-factly. "Maybe she didn't mean to hurt your friends. Maybe she was just scared and didn't know how to say so." Dr. Yithmara's telepathic projections suddenly intensified, carrying with them images and sensations that made several delegates stagger. "The child, he may be correct. I'm accessing deeper memory engrams now, images of others like her, a civilization, a culture, and then emptiness, terrible, cosmic emptiness." The implications hit the assembled delegates like a physical blow. Could it be possible that the creature they had labeled as an apex predator was actually the last survivor of an extinct civilization? Had her attacks been the actions of a being so traumatized by loss that she had forgotten how to communicate anything but pain? Zixthera made another complex vocalization, and this time, Dr. Marcus Chen's modified translator equipment picked up fragmentary meanings. Words like alone, searching, and home flickered across the display screens. Tommy pressed his face against the barrier again, his breath fogging the transparent aluminum. "You want to go home, don't you? But you can't find it." The dragon's massive eye fixed on the child, and slowly, deliberately, she moved her enormous snout to rest against the barrier directly opposite Tommy's face. The containment field hummed with the strain of maintaining integrity under the gentle pressure. "She's trying to be gentle," Dr. Sarah Chen breathed, watching the readings that showed Zixathera was carefully modulating her movements to avoid damaging the containment system. "She doesn't want to hurt anyone." Ambassador Krelnox clicked his mandibles in rapid succession. "This is still too dangerous. One breach of containment could result in catastrophic loss of life." But even as he spoke, the security systems were registering readings that contradicted his fears. Zixthera's aggression markers remained at 0. Her energy output had decreased to levels that suggested she was actually suppressing her natural power emissions to avoid causing harm. Tommy reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn, stuffed animal, a brown bear with one missing eye and fur that had been loved smooth by countless hugs. Without hesitation, he held it up for the dragon to see. "This is Mr. Buttons. He's my best friend. When I'm scared or sad, I hug him, and it makes me feel better. Do you want to see him?" Zixthara's response was immediate and startling. Her massive head tilted to examine the small toy, and her bioluminescent patterns shifted to soft golds and warm greens. She made a sound that could only be described as a purr, a vibration so deep it resonated through the chamber's structure. Dr. Yithmara's projections were now flowing with images of incredible beauty and sadness, memories of a civilization that had created wonders beyond imagination. Beings who had loved and laughed and dreamed before some cosmic catastrophe had swept them all away, leaving only Zixthara to carry the weight of an entire culture's extinction. "She's the last of her kind," Dr. Yithmara transmitted, her mental voice heavy with newfound understanding. "She's been alone for longer than most of our civilizations have existed. The attacks, they weren't random violence. They were desperate attempts to find others like herself, communication attempts that were misunderstood as aggression." The chamber fell silent as the magnitude of their collective misunderstanding became clear. They had spent months trying to destroy what might be the loneliest being in the universe, a creature whose only crime was not knowing how to express her pain in ways that others could understand. Tommy pressed Mr. Buttons against the barrier and made soft, comforting sounds, the same sounds he used to calm frightened animals back on Earth. "It's okay. You're not alone anymore. We're here now." And then, something happened that would be remembered as the moment everything changed. Zixthara, the terror of the galaxy, the destroyer of worlds, gently touched her massive snout to the barrier where the small child held his beloved toy. Her eye closed slowly, and a single crystalline tear, if such a thing was possible for her species, traced a path down her obsidian scales. The containment field flickered momentarily, not from strain or damage, but from the emotional resonance of a connection that transcended species, size, and the vast emptiness of space. For the first time in eons, Zixthara was not alone, and in that moment, every being in the chamber understood that they were witnessing the beginning of something unprecedented in galactic history. Not the destruction they had feared, but the possibility of healing that none of them had dared to imagine. The chamber remained in stunned silence as delegates witnessed the emotional exchange between the small human child and the galaxy's most feared creature. The air itself seemed charged with possibility, as if the universe was holding its breath for what would come next. High Counselor Vexara approached the barrier with careful, measured steps. Her ancient wisdom told her that they stood at a crossroads that would define the future of galactic civilization. "Dr. Chen," she addressed the linguist, "is there any precedent in human history for this type of interspecies communication?" Dr. Marcus Chen nodded slowly, his mind racing through anthropological studies and historical accounts. Throughout human history, children have often been the bridge between our species and others. They lack the learned fears and prejudices that adults develop. They respond to emotional cues rather than threat assessments. Security Chief Vorak rumbled uneasily, his massive form shifting with concern. The containment field is operating at maximum safe parameters. Any additional stress could result in system failure. "Maybe that's the point," Tommy said, turning to look at the imposing security chief with the fearless honesty of childhood. "Maybe she doesn't want to be in a cage anymore. Would you want to be in a cage?" Dr. Sarah Chen's instruments were detecting unprecedented changes in both her son and the dragon. There's some kind of bioresonance occurring between them. Tommy's brainwave patterns are synchronizing with hers in ways that should be impossible for different species. Dr. Yithmara's telepathic abilities were being overwhelmed by the depth of emotion and memory flowing from Zix Thara. "I'm seeing vast cities among the stars, beings who sang to the cosmic winds, art created from the light of dying stars. She's sharing her people's history through pure emotional transmission." Ambassador Krell Knox clicked rapidly, his scientific mind struggling with the implications. This level of psychic communication has never been documented. How is a primitive human child accessing memories from a species that may have evolved billions of years ago? "Love doesn't need evolution," Tommy said simply, pressing his small hand against the barrier. "It just needs to be real." As if responding to his words, Zix Thara began to glow with a soft, pearl-like luminescence that bathed the entire chamber in gentle light. The harsh artificial illumination of the council chamber was replaced by something that felt like starlight, warm and ancient, and infinitely sad. Admiral Thaneris stepped closer to the barrier, his warrior's instincts telling him to maintain distance while his growing understanding urged him forward. Her energy readings are still decreasing. If anything, she's containing her power more completely than when we first captured her. "She's trying not to hurt anyone," Dr. Sarah Chen observed. "Look at these readings. She's actively suppressing every natural defense mechanism, every instinctive response. She's making herself vulnerable." The dragon's massive eye focused on Tommy again, and she made a complex series of vocalizations that the modified translation equipment struggled to interpret. Fragments appeared on the screens. "Small bright one," "Hope song," "Remember home." Tommy giggled at the sounds, clapping his hands together in delight. "You're trying to give me a name. That's so cool. What should I call you?" "Zix Thara is really hard to say." Dr. Yithmara's projections suddenly carried a wave of warmth and something that could only be described as joy. She's pleased by his laughter. I'm detecting neural patterns associated with happiness, something I thought was impossible for her species based on our previous observations." "Maybe happiness was always possible," suggested Dr. Marcus Chen. "Maybe she just forgot how to feel it." Tommy suddenly had an idea, the kind of spontaneous inspiration that only children could have. He held up Mr. Buttons again and then, to everyone's shock, pressed his lips to the stuffed animal's fuzzy head in an exaggerated kiss. "See? That's how humans say we care about someone. Do you understand?" Zix Thara watched this demonstration with intense focus, her massive brain processing the gesture and its emotional significance. Through Dr. Yithmara's telepathic link, waves of understanding and something remarkably like wonder flowed through the chamber. "She comprehends the symbolic meaning," Dr. Yithmara transmitted. "In her species' culture, They had similar bonding rituals, but they involved harmonizing life force energies. She recognizes this as an equivalent expression of affection. Security Chief Vorak's voice carried a warning tone. The containment field is fluctuating, not from strain, but from some kind of resonance effect. It's as if she's trying to synchronize with the field harmonics. Before anyone could react, Tommy made a decision that would echo through galactic history. With the quick, impulsive movement of a 6-year-old, he ducked under the safety barrier that kept observers away from the containment field and pressed himself directly against the transparent aluminum wall. "Tommy, no!" Dr. Sarah Chen started forward, but her husband caught her arm. "Wait," Dr. Marcus Chen said, watching his son with a mixture of terror and pride. "Look at her." Zixthara had frozen completely, her massive form going utterly still. Every monitoring system in the chamber was registering the same impossible reading. She had voluntarily shut down every offensive capability she possessed. Her plasma breath weapons, her energy projectors, even her natural bioelectric defenses, all of it powered down to levels that registered as completely non-threatening. Tommy looked up at the enormous creature towering above him, separated only by a thin layer of transparent metal. "I know you're sad," he said softly. "I know you miss your family, but you don't have to be alone anymore." The dragon slowly, carefully, brought her massive snout down to rest against the barrier directly in front of the small child. Her breath fogged the transparent aluminum, and her bioluminescent patterns shifted to the softest possible glow. "She's trying to match his size perspective," Dr. Sarah Chen whispered in amazement. "She's making herself as small and non-threatening as possible." Dr. Yithamara's telepathic projections were now flowing with images of incredible beauty. Memories of Zixthara's people teaching their young through gentle touch, through the sharing of energy and emotion. It was a civilization built on empathy and connection, destroyed by forces beyond their control. Tommy stood on his tiptoes, bringing his face as close to the barrier as possible. "I wish I could hug you," he said. "Hugs make everything better." And then, in a moment that would be studied and debated for millennia to come, Tommy Chen did something that defied every law of xenobiology, every protocol of interspecies contact, and every assumption about the nature of communication itself. He pressed his small lips to the barrier and gave it a gentle kiss, directing that kiss toward the massive snout that rested just beyond the transparent wall. The effect was instantaneous and miraculous. Zixthara's entire body began to glow with a light that was indescribable in any known spectrum. The containment field, rather than failing, began to resonate in harmony with her energy signature. And through Dr. Yithamara's telepathic abilities, every being in the chamber suddenly experienced a flood of pure, overwhelming love. It wasn't romantic love or familial love, but something far more fundamental. The love that exists at the heart of consciousness itself. The recognition of shared existence and the joy of connection across the vast emptiness of space. Tears streamed down Dr. Sarah Chen's face as she experienced the emotional resonance. She's not dangerous. She never was. She was just a child herself, lost and alone and crying for her family across the cosmos. Ambassador Krelnox found himself trembling, his entire understanding of the universe shifting. The attacks, they weren't aggression. They were attempts at communication. She was trying to say hello in the only way she remembered. Admiral Thaneris staggered as the full implications hit him. "My fleet? She wasn't trying to destroy us. She was trying to get our attention. She was asking for help." The dragon made another complex vocalization, but this time, the universal translators caught fragments of meaning that needed no interpretation. Gratitude, hope, family found. Tommy stepped back from the barrier and grinned up at his parents with the satisfied expression of a child who had just solved a problem that adults had found impossible. "See? She just needed a friend." High Counselor Vexara approached the barrier with new understanding. Zixthara, she said formally, on behalf of the Galactic Council, we apologize. We misunderstood your intentions. The dragon's response was a gentle purr that vibrated through the chamber's structure, followed by a complex light pattern that the computers translated as acceptance and forgiveness. Dr. Marcus Chen looked at his son with wonder. Tommy, do you understand what you've done? You've just established first contact with a species we thought was extinct. You've prevented a war and possibly saved both our civilizations. Tommy shrugged with typical childhood nonchalance. I just made a new friend. That's what kids do. Security Chief Vorak was studying his instruments with amazement. The containment field is no longer necessary. Her energy signature has stabilized at completely non-threatening levels. She's asking permission to power down the barrier. Do it, said High Counselor Vexara without hesitation. If we're going to build trust, we must start with an act of faith. As the containment field powered down, Zixthara remained perfectly still, waiting for permission to move. Tommy walked forward without fear and placed his small hand on her massive snout. The dragon's scales were warm and smooth, humming with barely contained life force. Thank you for being my friend, Tommy said quietly. Would you like to see my home someday? Earth has lots of animals you might like. Through Dr. Yithmara's telepathic link, Zixthara's response filled the chamber with images of impossible beauty. Visions of Earth from space, of children playing in green meadows, of a place where a lonely dragon might finally find peace. The Galactic Council session that day officially ended with the establishment of a new department dedicated to interspecies emotional communication, headed jointly by Dr. Marcus Chen and Dr. Sarah Chen, with Tommy serving as honorary consultant. But unofficially, it ended with something far more precious. The knowledge that in a universe vast and cold and seemingly indifferent, the simple act of kindness from a 6-year-old human boy had proven that love could bridge any gap, heal any wound, and turn the most feared monster in the galaxy into a gentle guardian of hope. Years later, when historians wrote about the moment that changed everything, they would focus on the political implications, the technological breakthroughs, and the diplomatic achievements that followed. But those who were there would always remember a small boy who saw past fear to find friendship, who offered love where others saw only threat, and who proved that sometimes the most profound transformations come not from wisdom or strength, but from the fearless heart of a child who believes that everyone deserves to be loved. Zixthara became not the destroyer of worlds, but their protector, using her vast power to shield young civilizations from the cosmic dangers that had claimed her own people. And always beside her, when the loneliness threatened to return, was the memory of a small human boy who had looked into the eyes of the universe's most feared creature and seen not a monster, but a friend who just needed someone to care.